We are back with another episode of the Sky Society podcast. And today I'm speaking with Sam Walters. She is a digital media leader creating out of the box, unconventional product experiences, driving brand identity, and launching new direct to consumer tech lifestyle products. And she is currently the senior manager of global marketing experiences at Spotify. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you for having me. What a mouthful of a
I know. I was trying to make sure a little tongue twister there. You're doing so much. I love it. We're going to get into your entire career journey. You have done so much leading up to your current role here at Spotify. But before we jump in and do all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course. So Sam Walters, I live in Austin, Texas. I've been down here for almost 2 years. I moved from New York City recently. I work in marketing at Spotify. Outside of work, I'm a dog mom to a beautiful girl, Ruka, who is under my legs. So if you hear anything, that is her moving around. We adopted her here in Austin. And obviously with Spotify, I'm a music lover and I'm an avid runner, which the summers here make that a little difficult, but
yeah. What
as
were
we
you
were speaking
running over
earlier,
the summer?
yeah, it's a little scary, but it all
Like
works
midday,
out.
or are you going in the morning?
Oh no, in the morning or like at night.
Okay.
Like Ladybird Lake at night is randomly cool. It's like a little shadowy.
And you're by the
But
water.
it's
It's
very
still,
hot.
though, if you're not from Austin, it's still hot in the summer at night. It
Yeah.
does not cool down, or like you do not get a break. It can still be like 100 degrees at
Yeah.
night. Like
It's not safe. I don't recommend it, but sometimes you need like the mental release.
yes, absolutely great. What type of dog is Ruka?
Ruka's a mix. She looks like a pointer, but she's white with like auburn spots all over her. So
Oh,
she's
how pretty. Well, hopefully she makes a little appearance and I get to see her.
nice.
Amazing. Yeah. So one of the things before we dive into everything that you've done is that you've guided your career by curiosity. Can you tell me what that means to you?
Yeah, I think like I have always thought about like what's next. Like when I've moved into a role or found something that I've been interested in, I love to like learn all about it, probably to a fault, and become like an expert in it. And then just think about what is happening, like what's my next move? What is really going to make me tick and motivate me? And so I've always been very curious. I think it's like asking questions of, okay, this insight drove us to this decision, but what? Let's go back to that insight and truly pressure test it. Like, why do we think about people this way? Why do we think about messages this way, et cetera, et cetera? And I think curiosity within like the work, but curiosity in like my work moves of, oh, I've really liked this role that this person is doing. Like they seem really happy. Like I'm curious about that. Like, let's go explore, which I know we'll get into, but is likely why I've kind of jumped and wore a lot of different hats in my career thus far.
I like how you're prioritizing the things that you find interesting and that you really like, because I think sometimes in the career race of getting to the top, that gets forgotten. It's maybe more so about like, how do I get the better title, or how do I get the bigger salary, or how do I work at the bigger company, instead of like, am I chasing what energizes me? Am I chasing the work that gets me excited the most? Because I feel like that's a lot harder to do, but in the long run can get you a lot farther in a place where you're a lot happier.
Definitely. And I think marketing is a really broad umbrella. So it's important to find ideas or opportunities that you really like, because I think your passion for work also will make it better and elevate it. So if you're not motivated or you're not curious, like maybe it's not the right role for you. And so I'm always like encouraging myself and those around me to like look for other opportunities internally, externally, but kind of what that motivation is at its core is what has always driven me.
Amazing. Okay, so we're gonna start. I sometimes I start with the first job out of college, sometimes I don't, but with you I am, because it was such a cool, such a cool job that I wish I knew this existed and did this. So you were an international travel sales / social media marketer in Florence, Italy, which is insane. So tell me a little bit about why you chose that role and like what you did there.
Yeah, definitely. So I studied abroad in Spain my junior year, which was, I think, life changing for me. It just like opened my eyes to different culture, different people, different food. And I just wanted more of it. And when I graduated, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to be in South Carolina anymore. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. And so I kind of just took a leap of faith. I connected with a person I had met that worked for the company I went on to work for. out of school, and was just kind of like, do you think this would be a great fit for me? Talked to his boss, who was the owner at the time. And then next thing I knew, I'm packing up my life and moving to Italy. And it's kind of like real world style. I think there was like 8 or 9 of us, all the same age, working for
Oh
this
my
company.
gosh.
And you're working like it is a grind. So basically, in a nutshell, we were doing organic social media, travel sales for kids that were studying abroad, and you would get them to sign up for certain trips and then take them on the trips. So for like a little over a year, I got to really travel Europe in a way that I never even imagined. And I learned so much about myself. I also created such a network of people. But it was a grind. And so like after the year, I was ready to come back stateside and truly focus on like growing my career. I think I like learned a lot within those like sales and sales and like people role. Um, to kind of figure out, okay, like what do I want to do next? My growth here is a little stagnant. So where can I travel to next, to use that pun?
Yes. And where in Spain did you study abroad?
In Barcelona.
Okay, I studied abroad in Madrid and I loved it. And I've
Oh, I
lately been
love
having
Madrid.
I've been having the itch of like everybody has now gone abroad because it's like the post-COVID,
Yeah.
like everyone's getting their travel itch scratched, I guess. And so I'm like dying to go back. But Florence actually also studied abroad in Florence a little bit too. But I'm curious, what did your family think when you're like, hey, I just graduated college, I'm going to Florence and I'm leaving? Like, were they supportive? Were they
I
scared?
probably both. No, they've always been really supportive of me, and I don't think like I've never done the traditional route in a sense, I guess. Like I don't think it was a surprise to them that I was like, peace. Um, but yes, they've always were very encouraging of like my career path and what I wanted to do. I think they always knew that I was very driven. I was the first on my dad's side to graduate from a 4-year college. So I think that they were just proud that I was going to move on in the world. And I think they were also really proud that I didn't come home to South Carolina, that I like really wanted to go on my own journey, which was very nice and very supportive to have, because most people don't have that, which so I tried really hard not to take that for granted. My parents or my mom, my sister, and my grandparents came to visit me in Florence over Christmas. That Christmas I was there, which was really special. And
Aw,
so I'm really happy that they did that.
that's got to be one of like the best memories of having them all. Christmas in Florence, I can only imagine how beautiful that must have been.
Yeah, it was amazing. There's just like a different vibe in Italy, as you know, and it was a great blessing for them to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you did this grind, you got some sales experience, which also I think can be very, very valuable. And I'm sure it's going to kind of thread through the rest of your career. But you went on to work for Media Assembly as an integrated communication specialist, like right when you got back, and you did that only for a year. So why were you there so quickly before moving on to your next role?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that too in like interviews today, because it is like I don't like to be a jumper. I think that's my advice I give to everyone is like don't jump, be somewhere for at least 2 years to really truly understand if your like growth is stunted there or your curiosity runs out and you want to move. And I like eat my words because I was there for a year. But I think like I knew I wanted to go into marketing and advertising, and I wanted to learn the business side of kind of content. And so that's why I gravitated towards an agency. Also, agencies typically have the most open roles for young grads.
Mm.
So it was like a transition that felt natural. And while I knew I was qualified for the position, I know my boss, and if she ever listens to this podcast, she will confirm this, that we had a great interview, but I also complimented her on her nail polish, and I'm pretty sure that's why she hired me at the end of the
No.
day. And I say that and I share that because not only is it valid, but it's also like it taught me to infuse my personality in my conversations, in networking, in finding roles and things like that. And so being comfortable with being who I am and bringing that to the workplace, kind of that was a role that I really felt comfortable doing that. I was only there for a year because it was an agency life. And I did move on to Essence, which is an agency after that. But I was working on accounts that weren't really gratifying to me. I wasn't really learning a lot. This is when programmatic was huge in agency world. And so it wasn't as gratifying, and I wasn't feeling like I was valued from a growth perspective from that team at the time. So I looked outwards, and that's why I was only there for a short amount of time.
And I love that you mentioned there about the personality piece, and we've had a couple of guests talk about that. But I think when you're young, you're so scared to do that because you feel like you need to be this like professional, polished, like persona in interviews. But it's really nice to hear like, okay, you could do something like that. I don't know, maybe not complimenting nail polish, but doing something that showcases like I feel comfortable here, not like I can't say anything outside of what you specifically asked me in the interview.
Exactly.
And then the other thing I want to touch on really quickly is you mentioned the job hopping. So again, since a lot of our audience is a little bit younger, it is pretty standard to say like 2 years is like not considered job hunting. That's like the standard. 1 year would be something that would bring up a question. And I know that there's companies that won't even hire someone who has a tenure less than 2 years at companies. Like that's just the bare minimum standard. So if you didn't already know that, now you do. But it's awesome that you realize that, you know, I don't feel like I'm learning, I don't feel gratified, and I know that exists, and I'm going to go find it, because a lot of people just complain about those things and then they don't actually go and change them. So I think that's awesome that you switched. You went over to Essence, and for those of you who don't know, it's a major advertising agency that services clients like Google, Flipkart, NBC Universal, L'Oreal, Financial Times, lots of huge companies. And you started as a digital associate account manager for Google, and 4 years later, you were the associate director of content and innovation. So an insane growth trajectory in just under 5 years. So tell me about how you were able to, you know, grow and move up so quickly.
Yeah, and also like entirely different roles too.
Yes.
When I started at Essence, there may be like 80 of us in the New York office. And we predominantly only worked on Google. Google was like our only client, at least stateside. And that was really attractive to me, as I'm sure it is to a lot of people, just to like work on a huge tech partner and a true mover in the space. And so that was one of the reasons that I applied to the job to begin with. As a digital associate manager, I really just supported our buying team and like putting media plans together and truly understanding what it is to buy media with strategy. So moving on from just kind of straightforward programmatic into thinking about things full circle, and how do you put a media plan together across different publications that service the goals of your client. So I worked predominantly on YouTube, and like kind of moved up the ranks to be like the facilitator of what was our YouTube client goals and like how can we service them, and making sure there was like no communication breakdown and things were getting done and holding our team accountable. But it was really like a relationship role. Like my clients at the time for YouTube are still people I keep in touch with to this day, and have really become like mentors to me, whether they probably know that or not. And so then there was a role that a client service, it was great. Again, like learning so much about how to maintain relationships, how to push relationships, how to take feedback, good and bad, which is really hard. And learning that at a younger age really helped me shape how I give and receive feedback now. And then I did reach a point where I was like, okay, like I don't believe I'm learning that much anymore. Like my curiosity is like knocking. And so working at Essence when it was around like 80 people and it was growing rapidly, I got exposed to internal leadership really quickly and really fast, and was really able to have a reputation and like that preceded me with them and build a rapport with the leadership team there. And this role opened up, or I kind of pitched myself for this role at one of my senior leads at the time, and was like, I know I can do this. I will crush it. Hire me. And that's where I moved into this content and innovation role,
Tell
thinking
me,
about branded content.
I want
I've
to, sorry, I want to go back there. You said you pitched yourself. Tell me about what you did to pitch yourself.
I'm sure my story is very different than his story, and the truth lies in there in between. But no, I think like you're basically selling yourself. Like I was like, can we go get coffee and tea? I want to learn more about like, what are you guys doing? Like, what is your goal? Because at first you're fact finding when you're pitching yourself internally, right? Like you want to make sure that you're not going to hand raise for something that you don't want, because then you're not going to perform. And I think sometimes your internal reputation is greater currency than we think about, or greater currency than when you go externally. And so, yeah, we went for coffee a few times. He discussed the team's like his vision for the team, and I discussed my vision for my career. And luckily, I found someone internally and um, who was a champion for like young roles and young career shaping, and specifically like would like kind of open the path for young women, and he really empowered a team. And so that I really gravitated to that. And I think this was the first time in my career that not only was it work that I was curious about, but I found a leader that I could trust, that I knew was going to help me get to where I want to be. And I remember to this day, he was even like, I want you to outgrow this job. Like, I want you to outgrow me. And I thought that was really empowering. And so we just had a bunch of different conversations. And finally, it made sense for me to move on to his team. And it was a really hard decision because I also had a great manager at that time. And so, yeah, I moved into this like content innovation team working across the entire Google portfolio. So, not just on YouTube.
Insane. And I want to go back to what you said about how when you did these coffee chats, it wasn't you being like, pick me, hire me, hire me. It was you first understanding the role, which is so crucial. Honestly, for anything you do in sales, if you're going to sell something, you need to understand what the other person wants in order to effectively sell it to them. So by you taking the time to actually listen to like, what's your vision? Like, what do you see this role looking like? What do you want from your team is, I feel like, a very mature thing for you to do, especially since you were so young in this role, because most people don't think that way. They're more of like, I want it, pick me, I'm the best, you should hire me. And so I love that you did that first. And I think that's such great advice for anyone who wants to go out for a promotion or wants to switch maybe to a different department, is to first like just do it at coffee chat and make it about them, make it about, learning what they've done. So I think that's absolutely amazing. Okay, so you were there for a good amount of time, and so you moved into this new role of content and innovation. Can you talk to me about maybe some of the cool projects that you got to work on, or what you learned while you were there?
Yeah, it was a really fun team. It was like a really niche team. We really were tasked with thinking about new ways of marketing hardware and software for Google. So um, it was a fun space to play in. We were digital only, so we had partners on like the TV and more traditional buying side too that we had to collaborate with. But it was fun. It was like a little like ideation pot, if you will. And so there were opportunities, like a lot of the things that we did fall more in like the hardware side. But and what I mean by that is working across like the Google Home Hub launch. And yes, there's a basic media plan that happens, but our team would come in and say, like, what are ideas or opportunities where we can elevate that? So for I think like 2 or 3 years, we did a like during the Thanksgiving parade, a series of like mini shorts or like almost mini stories with Amy Poehler and Maya Rudolph and folks that we knew our target audience gravitated to and knew. And they were like funny little shorts that we would do during the Thanksgiving Day parade. And it seems so simple, but it was really like impactful and it was funny and people like gravitated towards it. Other stuff we did, which our client actually brought this one to us, which I thought was really cool, is like Patrick Mahomes was huge. He was in his first year playing in the NFL right before this is where my sports dies. And coming from an SEC school, I feel bad saying that. Right before he won like NFL Player of the Year, and he had just bought a home with his then girlfriend, and we outfitted his closet with like a Google Nest, and it was like a different way to engage with the products, and it was really cool, and it hit a completely different target audience. And so testing those against each other and understanding how to bring those to life was really interesting. And then I didn't directly work on all of these things, but then my colleagues worked across Pixel and like understanding the development of a lens and like truly doing product marketing, but using branded content to bring that to life was a task that was really fun to watch them play with. So they did things like the first virtual cover of Condé Nast magazines. And so all of that stuff was just trying to apply like tech and really elevate tech in a way that is simple and easy to understand for different audiences to gravitate towards. So it was fun, and it like taught me how to think outside the box and push ideas further. Other stuff we did was like we launched a whole podcast with Think with Google, which is a B2B brand for them, and they had never dipped in a podcast before. And then next thing you know, like the CMO was asking to be a guest on one of the episodes. So
Oh my
it
gosh.
was very cool, and it was very much like you're thinking about one part of the business one day, and then the next you're walking into a meeting about the different part. And I think the best thing about working on a brand like that is they're very collaborative, and everyone at Google was a champion for the work that we did, and truly wanted to be part of it and elevate it. And so those client relationships really did come into play in a big way. And again, people that I'm still engaged with this day to this day. And so that partner and collaboration was really like career shaping for me.
Yeah, what an incredible role to get to work on such, I feel like, campaigns that the average person at a marketing agency does not get to work on. So that is so special that you got to do that. And I'm sensing this theme now into tech as we move on to Spotify a little bit. But so you ended up moving on to Spotify. So that's where you currently are now. So you started there as the manager of studios marketing. Can you talk to me about why you stepped down and took an inferior title? Because before you were associate director, now you're going down to a manager title. What was your strategic thinking behind that move?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like, yeah, I did take a title cut to go into Spotify, a big one. But I think also it's not apples to apples with an agency and a brand. And it's really hard to navigate that, especially as you're starting out, just like comparisons of titling. And I knew that it was a step down, but I was willing to make that lateral-ish type of move in order to learn more. I really felt that I like learned as much as I wanted to, or as much as I could from the current business I was working across at Essence. And I wanted to move into a marketing role at a brand that I was A, passionate about, but B, that I could kind of like learn the Swiss Army knife of what is marketing. And I really only had like one knife in my pile at the time. And so that to me was more important than trying to grow my ladder at the time. So yeah, I moved into the studio's marketing role. I was really interested in it because it was across podcasts. Podcasts were new for Spotify at that newish for Spotify at
That's
that
insane. Now it's
time.
like Spotify's
Yeah.
main focus.
Yeah. And they had just acquired a bunch of podcast studios like The Ringer, Gimlet, Parcast, et cetera. So it was a fun time to be there. And I got to work on like a lot of things kind of out the gate of that role change.
And so you moved here over to Spotify. Was there anything, or why specifically Spotify, I could ask? There's a lot of companies that you could have moved to keep growing. And I love that because that takes us back to kind of what you said about how curiosity has guided your career. But what specifically about Spotify drew you to it?
Well, I think I'd be lying if I said I didn't apply to a lot of places when I was looking externally. But I think one of the reasons that this role stuck out to me is like I've always been interested in like storytelling. And in school, I was very interested in like the visual side of it. And then as I grew in my career, like I noticed, podcasting was taking off, audio was taking off at just like a larger like reach scale than we'd seen in the past, or at least that we've seen since the growth of radio. And that was interesting to me. And I also was starting to look at the Spotify portfolio and I was like, wow, there's actually like a lot of amazing stories in here that matter. And I can go work on work that matters to people in a different, more intimate type of way. Not just saying that the work I had done in the past didn't matter, but this was like, there's something intimate about podcasting that you are connecting directly one-to-one with a user. And I always thought that was really special, and being able to tell a story from like a consumer marketing perspective about that felt awesome to me. I also really liked that Spotify is a tech company, like at its core. And so it took something that was like very simplified and found an audience and scaled it dramatically, and wasn't just focused on music, and it started to pivot and like really take on the audio umbrella, which I think is necessary to be successful, is pivoting. And so that was also what really appealed to me as well. I also, and I know this is like a very long-winded answer, like I really enjoyed interviewing with my boss for this role. And I really did accept the role because of her at the end of the day. Like I felt a lot of trust with her out the gate and like the ability to grow my career under her wing. And that was, again, really important to me, knowing that like I need to be comfortable with like who I'm laddering into.
And the interviews are both ways, where you're not just trying to get the
Exactly.
role, but you're also interviewing, like, that's their boss. You're going to spend, hopefully a long time with them, working with them. Like, do you also enjoy them and feel comfortable and feel like there's someone you could learn from? I think
Exactly.
it's really important to make sure those interviews are two ways. Because you mentioned that story piece, I want to just stick on that for a minute here. So it's something that you'd mentioned to me before, like storytelling, something you're incredibly passionate about. And throughout your career, you've highlighted a lot of public stories, like big brands, you can think Google and Spotify. But you've also done a great deal from stories from your colleagues and from, ordinary people. So can you share why those stories matter so much to you?
Yeah, I think it's like a couple different answers to that question. I think one thing is like when you are ambitious and you start out in your career, like it's very much a me. Like, what can I do to succeed? How can I be better? And it's a lot of me and I like thought process is going into your career growth. And this role has, or joining Spotify has really taught me that like it's not a singular opportunity. Like it's that's my dog. It's not a singular mindset. Like in order to grow, you really need to learn from the people around you. And my story is only better if I know yours and than other person's. And so I really started to gravitate towards like this idea of like learning from my team and being the best version of myself for my team, because then we can all grow together. So that's part of it. The other part of it is like I think that storytelling is different for everyone too. I think the way that you interpret a podcast is different than the way that I interpret a podcast. And that to me was very interesting. And I think that comes to life like with some of the work that we did on the Obama's podcast. Like the Michelle Obama podcast was a combination of other people's stories and her story weaved within it. And the way that I interpret it is very different than the way that someone else will. And so I've always felt that there's kind of like a magic in understanding how to embrace that across marketing, and in how you kind of share these pieces of work with the world. And so that part to me was like that magic kind of passion point for me, and still definitely is when I think about content and how to scale it to a
Yeah.
bunch of different
I
things.
I love hearing how marketers describe why stories matter, because they matter to all of us in marketing in one way or another. But it's really interesting to hear like how uniquely they mean something to you or to someone else, because they are alive, they're living things. They're not just something that you write on paper that's set in stone that is read the same way by everybody. And I think that's what makes them so powerful and why the best marketers can do that really well. Okay, so let's stick here for your Spotify role a little bit. So you started off manager of studios marketing, and then you ended up getting promoted. So then you ended up going back up to that title. So you're back here at the senior manager of global marketing experience. You just got promoted like 3 months ago, so congratulations on that. So can you tell me a little bit about what your role entails? Like, what does a day or a week in the life look like for you now?
Oh, it's like every day is different. But I think like the reason for my trajectory at Spotify is like hand raising and asking for opportunity. I think like when I was a manager, which isn't a crazy jump, was I had extra room on my plate, and I was like, hey, like I have time. Like, where does the team need help? And I never would have been able to work on our relationship with Higher Ground if that didn't happen. And then after the Michelle Obama podcast and Renegades was launched, I kind of had more time, and I was like, I have time again. Hi. And what was happening internally at the time is thinking through different ways of audio. And again, like I mentioned earlier, expanding that umbrella of what it means to be an audio company. And so we're trying a bunch of new formats, and we're launching a product called Spotify Green Room, which is now Spotify Live. And that early days, I was like telling my boss, I genuinely love this idea of how to reshape audio for different user behaviors and things like that. And so she was like, great, I have an awesome opportunity for you over here. And that was what I think hand raising and saying I have time and asking questions is how and why I was promoted into this senior role where I was working across new products that truly cut across the business in a way that studios being kind of siloed to podcast only hadn't before. And so that's a little bit of like the thinking behind how I've grown thus far here. And now my role or my team is, I've moved teams in the last 3 months, is to a very niche team in similar in that like content and innovation role that I have had in the past of thinking through experiences that keep users engaged on platforms. So you can think about like Spotify Wrapped and like, why is that so magical?
Yes, the quintessential marketing
quintessential
campaign,
marketing
literally.
campaign. Literally a resume builder for
Yes.
sure. And so like our team is tasked with thinking about these different experiences. My team is tasked on Wrapped, but like that is like the premise of this kind of new team at Spotify. So it's really exciting. It's just kind of thinking about what would be cool to us as a user and implementing it. And I think outside of Wrapped, the last thing the team that I can't take credit for because I've not been on the team that long by any stretch of the imagination is the Kendrick Lamar album ranker that launched over the summer. That was just insanely successful and fans gravitated towards it. And it's just a kind of a
What's
little fun
that? Can you
surprise and
explain
delight.
that?
Yeah. So basically what it was is it's an experience on platform that asks you to rank your top 5 Kendrick Lamar projects. And it sounds really simple because it is. And a lot of, at the time, Kendrick was touring. He was huge in hip hop. I mean, he is huge in hip hop, but he was huge in hip hop press at the time. And it kind of all worked out. And the team launched it and it was awesome. And people really loved it. And people in the hip hop community engaged with it. And it's simple and fun and like a way to like kind of have a conversation as a brand with your audience. And so like, again, I can't take credit for that because the team set it in motion way before I joined, but it's just fun to kind of be in that space again, where you're dreaming big and then you're like, okay, can this reality happen? And fact finding to see if it can.
And I think Spotify does such a good job at it. And I want to go back to rap too, because I used to be an Apple Music listener until literally all my friends are posting their Spotify raps. And I'm like, I feel so left out. Like, I want to be a part of this. And if you go through the Wrapped, and I've worked in software before too, and you really just understand it's basically just picking data points from, it's nothing like, I mean, I'm sure it took a lot of work, but it's nothing like insanely like crazy that you guys are coming out with. You're just basically creating something that's shareable that makes people, want to post it, and that makes people want to use Spotify because there's this FOMO. But if you want to like talk a little bit about the magic of Wrapped, or if you have anything to share, because I feel like it's probably, I talk about it when I teach in Sky Accelerator of that as an example of a marketing campaign, just because I think it's so innovative and powerful. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like our Super Bowl as a brand for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's like it's a simplification of data points that come to life in magical, like, but also very simple to understand way for users. And people love to talk about themselves, like myself included with this podcast, but people love to share about themselves, and Wrapped is that. It's a little bit of bragging rights and a little bit of like clout, if you will. And so I think that's why it's so fun for users. It's also like a very huge cross-functional execution, and I give so much props to the teams that work on it every single year. It is such a fun and like awesome environment, and I think the campaign creative and assets that come out of that is just a tribute to the great talent and team that works on it internally.
Yeah, it is definitely, the Super Bowl of Spotify. I think that's a good way to put it, because it's creating, basically it's like an excuse for you to talk about yourself is basically what it's creating. And then I mean, I feel like it even goes back to storytelling of, you have to pick out of so many different data points you could possibly share, right? It is infinite amount of like, what are we going to share this year? Like, and even when you walk through it, it goes through like your story of whatever the year is. And so I feel like that even takes it back to storytelling at another level.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So working on Spotify is a dream for so many people. And as we come to an end here for the episode, I would love to hear what your advice is for young marketers who want to have a career like yours, or who want to be working at a job like you have now.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've mentioned this a few times now, but like just hand raise and like be curious and work on things that you're passionate about, because you don't want to like wake up one day and be like, I hate this, or I wish I did this move instead of this one. And I think you just need to listen to your own intuition and what you like. And that's been a big thing that I continue to remember and like teach myself to remember. I also do think that agency life is, if you want to be in marketing, like agency life is, I can't encourage more of it. You learn so much about the business, and it's often like paid media and advertising is something that is just gold. Like, and you learn the grind, you like learn how to do everything. And so I encourage, if you're trying to go out to these big marketing jobs and you're just not getting it, like try agency for a little while, get your bearings on the business. And then I think like find a mentor, and like it don't, and they might not even know that they're your mentors, but find someone that you can confide in, that you trust, because like at the end of the day, networking is crucial as well for this business. And then I think from a Spotify perspective, like I did blind email my resume in, and luckily had the right keywords on my resume to pop a little bit. But I think if I wasn't at Essence before, I never would have been confident to secure my role here. I think that working in a company that was small, that grew exponentially while I was there, and gave me a line of a vision into the aperture of that business, I never would have been able to like be confident in going after this role, and truly knowing that I could be successful in it. And so that's like a lot of advice, but I hope
It's all
helpful.
great
Just,
advice. I feel like anyone can snack and grab a little bit of whatever they needed there. So I think that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And then my last question for you is, how can our audience find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. It's probably the easiest place to do so.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the Sky Society podcast and for sharing your journey. It's been so fun going through all of it, and I've learned so much talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.